Alright, what's going on, everybody? How you all doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Fanatical Viewing Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. I may include something else in this podcast as well, I don't know, it just depends on how long it takes me to talk about Godzilla vs. Kong. So, I know I'm getting to this a little bit late. Like I said, I'm trying to pump out more of the podcast, just to, make them a little bit shorter, but pump more of them out there, and, whittle my list down of things that I want to talk about, because the list is getting longer at a faster rate than I can talk about these things and get, the podcasts up. So we're going to be talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. I saw this in theater, and I didn't really care, kind of Godzilla vs. Kong was kind of the first real movie to come out when theaters started reopening, I guess the second time, because theaters almost opened up before that, during the whole pandemic shit. Around the time Tenet was coming out, because we had Tenet, Bill and Ted, The New Mutants, and I believe there was something else probably, but I saw all those in theaters as well. I had no reservations during the pandemic about going to the movies. Mainly because I work at a hospital, so if I was going to get it, I was going to get it regardless. But, I mean, I never got it, so maybe I'm not, predisposed to get COVID, or even if I did, maybe I was one of the people that didn't have any symptoms or anything like that, so there was no real way for me to tell. And then even by the time Godzilla vs. Kong came out, I had already had my COVID shot. I didn't even have to worry at that point about too much about getting it or anything like that. I already had my COVID shot, my second one. I was in the first wave of people who got the COVID shot because I worked at a hospital, so I was allowed to get it, basically. So, I had my second shot of the COVID shot by January of 2021. The first week of January 2021, I got my second COVID shot. So I've been vaccinated for a while, but I did go and see Godzilla vs. Kong. Like I said, I wasn't really worried about getting COVID or anything like that. By that point, I already had my shot, but I worked at a hospital, so if I was going to get it, I was going to get it regardless of where I was or whatever. But I never got sick at any point. I never showed any symptoms, so I was like, I just went to the movies every time there was a movie that I wanted to watch. And of course, Godzilla vs. Kong, one of those movies. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I love Godzilla. Not so much a Kong fan. I'm not I'm not a big fan of gorillas or monkeys or primates in general. So I didn't really. Kong is just not my thing. But Godzilla, I fucking love Godzilla. I love the movies, all of them. Godzilla is something I love. I love kaiju in general. And like I said, even though I'm not a big fan of Kong, I do like this Kong they have created for this MonsterVerse with Warner Brothers and I think it's Legendary and stuff like that. I really like the designs that they came up with, which is kind of one of the first things I wanted to talk about in this, because I really love the designs. I like what they did with Godzilla. I grew up with is it the 1999 or 2000 Godzilla with Matthew Broderick? I grew up with that movie, and I kind of like that movie. I think it's a little bit ridiculous, and it's not so much a Godzilla film for me, it's just kind of like a monster film for me. But I do like that film, and I do have some just weird memories of that movie, watching it when I was a kid. Especially that beginning scene. I think he's in Chernobyl or something like that. Just weird. There's some weird stuff in that movie that I really like, but regardless, I wasn't a big fan of that design of that Godzilla, but like I said, I oftentimes don't view that movie as a Godzilla movie. I see it as more of a monster movie, but I wasn't a big fan of that design. Just basically looked like a big T-Rex, but the design that they have starting from the 2014 Godzilla movie, I loved. I like that he's a little thick. I like he's kind of chunky. I love especially his head and his face. I think I really like the look of it. He looks mean. but almost kind of adorable, which is kind of weird to say, which would probably automatically lose any credibility I have talking about the Godzilla movies, but man, I love the design of this Godzilla. I like that he's a little bit pudgy, he's a little thick. I love his roar. I think it sounds amazing. And I like what they did with Kong in Kong Skull Island. I like that he was less gorilla-like, and he kind of walked a little bit more upright, and he was kind of like, he was slim, but still muscular. I kind of liked that look, and they kind of gave him like a gorilla goatee sort of looking thing. I don't know. I really liked his design. One of the things I do have to say that I didn't particularly care for, even though it makes total sense, and I can't knock any points off of Godzilla vs. Kong for this, but they did have Kong, kind of walk on all fours more often in Godzilla vs. Kong, which I thought was, I don't know, I like it when he's more, up on two legs, stuff like that. I prefer that. But I really liked his design. He sounded good, even though they didn't really have to do a whole lot. They just had to make him, sound like a gorilla. But I really think what they did in Kong Skull Island was really good in terms of his design and everything like that. And if we're talking about these movies, I'll kind of talk about them in order, kind of give my thoughts really quick on the other films. The 2014 film, Godzilla. I really enjoy that movie. There are some aspects of that movie that I really like. I really like basically the first act of the movie with Bryan Cranston. Like, that whole section I think is really good. I think the intro, the beginning of the movie, all the beginning stuff is awesome. I love all those parts. I really have no complaints with that section of the movie in general. And there are some really interesting aspects that a lot of people will complain that the human aspect of Godzilla, the 2014 Godzilla, is a little bit too much, and I would agree with that to an extent, but there are certain scenes in that movie, like I believe it's when the main human guy that we're watching is on like a train or something, or maybe he's in an airport, I can't remember, but he's in like Hawaii or something like that, and he sees like whatever that, I don't remember the name that they came up with for that monster that Godzilla fights in that movie, but like he sees that monster like fly by and like shit like that. Like, there's some scenes in that movie that are shown from the human perspective that I think work really well, because it's the first time at least in this universe, in these Godzilla and Kong movies, where humans are experiencing these creatures basically for the first time, or at least the mass public is. So there's some really cool scenes where humans are you're in the human perspective, and you just see these giant fucking creatures like flying around and all this shit, and it's a really cool perspective that I like, and I think works for this movie being the first movie in this universe. And I think it really works for this movie. But I will still agree that there are other scenes where they concentrate just too much on the human aspects. And that's probably my biggest problem with this movie. And I actually forgot to... Actually, if this podcast sounds a little bit weird, I apologize. I forgot to turn the gate off on my microphone, so you'll probably hear that clicking in and out. If you're kind of unfamiliar, the gate is basically, for a microphone, is when I stop talking, the microphone actually like turns off and only turns on after a certain noise level is breached, basically. And usually I turn that off for the podcast just because it can be a little distracting to hear it pop in and out on just a talking head video. You would normally want that activated for like a stream or something where you have game audio in the background so you don't hear the noise gate click on and off. But I forgot to turn that off, so I apologize. If it sounds a little weird, I am sorry. Anyway, let's see. What else do I want to talk about? So I really do like the first Godzilla movie. I think it's good. I think it's great. It's a really fun movie. A little too much on the human stuff, but I really like it. A lot of people complain that a lot of the fighting stuff happens at night. Again, like, sure, that can be an excuse to mask some of the imperfections of the CGI, but you have to realize, like, in a 24-hour day, a good chunk of those hours are night. So the likelihood of, if I'm thinking about it logically, the likelihood of a monster fight happening at night, percentage-wise, is pretty decent. You know, it's pretty decent. And even the end of the movie doesn't really take place at night, even if there is a lot of, like, dust in the air that kind of darkens it a little bit, but whatever. Monster fights happening at night, I don't really consider too much of a problem. Just, you know, mathematically, you know, percentage-wise, that it's pretty likely a fight is going to occur at night, just because it's, you know, 24 hours in a day, and a good chunk of those hours are, you know, either dark or pitch black. So it's what I don't understand that complaint all that much. But even when you get to Godzilla, they put one like kind of during the day, so it's not like a big fucking deal for those that want to complain about something stupid like that. But regardless, and then let's see, we're gonna talk about Kong Skull Island. This has actually taken me a while to get to the actual movie I want to talk about, but we'll kind of speed this up a little bit. I like Kong Skull Island. It's a super fun movie. I think it is definitely different from Godzilla in that it just tries to be a fun movie. I do also like that it's kind of like a period piece. I think it takes place during the 70s. I think, I could be wrong. But I do like that it's kind of like a period piece as well. You know, super fun cast from John Goodman, Tom Hiddleston, Sam Jackson, Brie Larson's in it, even though I don't think her character is kind of... Not that I have anything against Brie Larson, even though I think she tends to look like she's full of herself in the movies that she's in, but her characters, I don't really care for her character in that movie. But like I said, I don't really have too much of a problem with her in general, just her character kind of sucked a little bit, I think. But really fun movie. But again, it is a movie, and I guess I don't have too much of a problem with a movie concentrating on the human side of things too much, especially when it's introducing the monster for the first time. Especially in this universe, you know, Kong Skull Island was introducing Kong in this universe for the first time. So if the movie started off with Kong, it would have been a little weird if it just started off showing us about Kong, you know, and not really introducing, you know, the island or, you know, anything else surrounding Kong. So I really don't have a problem with that. And plus, you have definitely much more interesting characters, human characters in Kong than you do in Godzilla. So I really enjoy Kong Skull Island. It's not the it's just a fun movie, and that's kind of just what I expect from kaiju movies in general, just to see fucking big monsters doing shit. And yeah, I think it is sometimes a little too heavy on the comedy aspects, but still a really fun movie. And I think the director, Jordan Vogt Roberts, or however you say his name, I think he did a really good job directing that movie, which I think was like his first like big movie, which is what they've kind of done with the MonsterVerse in general. Warner Brothers has kind of given these movies to, you know, lesser known directors who haven't really directed many things, probably so Warner Brothers could control them more, I'm assuming. But you know, I bet Warner Brothers didn't want to have to fight a director that thinks they deserve some, you know, creative freedom on something. So, but whatever. There's arguments to be had on both sides, I think. But I really like Kong Skull Island, and I really like the kind of I really like the art direction they went with on Kong Skull Island. A lot of parts are really just colorful and just really cool looking. Really fun film. I don't really have too many problems with it, other than, you know, like, don't expect it to be high art or anything like that. You probably shouldn't expect that from a Kong or Godzilla movie anyway. But it's still it is just a fun, you know, fun movie. Godzilla, King of the Monsters, I fucking love that movie. I think it's fantastic. I think these movies have just gotten better as they've gone on, to be honest. I think they've learned, as these movies have gone on, I think they've learned the human to monster balance better and the story elements better. I think they've gotten better at both of those things, so the movies have gotten progressively better for me. Whereas, like, a movie like the 2014 Godzilla sometimes concentrated too much on the humans. I think Godzilla, King of the Monsters, did a really good job. It kind of had the same amount of human stuff in it, but I think King of the Monsters did a better job at, going back and forth between the monster and the human stuff, where there are portions of the 2014 Godzilla that linger on the human stuff for too long, where King of the Monsters, I feel like, does a really good job of spending some time on the humans, then doing the monsters, humans, monsters. I feel like it's a more balanced film. And I really like the story of that movie. I really just love how we get a wide variety of kaiju, Rodan, Ghidorah, Mothra. I like how we get all that stuff, and they look amazing. The fights are great. I really love that movie, and I think it's Ken Watanabe, I think. I love him in that film. I think he's fantastic. He was also in the 2014 Godzilla. He was great. I just really, really love King of the Monsters. I think it's a great film. In terms of the, some of the human characters aren't really all that interesting, but I think it kind of needs to be there. A lot of people will give King of the Monsters shit, and I don't quite understand why. Even, hearing their complaints, I think their complaints with the movie are, justifiable to them, but I think if you're thinking about, it's fucking Godzilla, for Christ's sake. Like, I think your expectations are a little, I don't know, I think your expectations have to be flexible depending on what movie you're watching, But whatever. Now, getting to Godzilla vs. Kong, finally, this is basically a Kong film, as I'm pretty sure everybody expected. I mean, we had Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, King of the Monsters. Now we have Godzilla vs. Kong. It's basically a Kong movie. Most of the film concentrates on Kong. Godzilla kind of just shows up when he needs to as part of the story, which is fine. Like, again, like I say, it's part of the story. So having Godzilla show up willy-nilly is probably what people wanted, but for the story that we have in this film, and you could have any complaints you want about the story, but for the story that we have, Godzilla showing up when he needs to is fine. I don't really have any problems with that. Just had to pop my fingers. And for the most part, I pretty much like everything. Everything with I really have very little complaints about this movie. The complaints I do have I feel like are pretty big complaints, but just in general, at the end of the day, I still love this fucking movie. I thought it was super, super fucking fun. I really loved everything with Kong. Kong was really good. Like I said, I don't really care for the fact that they made him use all fours more often in this movie, but still, we got some really cool Kong stuff. You can tell that he is older. I'm not 100% positive, like, if you could tell. Apparently, he is bigger in this movie, because in Kong Skull Island, he was still kind of young. He was still more in his adolescence, but you can tell that he's older in this movie. It's hard to tell that he's any bigger, honestly, at least from my one-time viewing of the movie. But you could definitely tell that he was a little bit older, and still had a really good design to him. Really, really liked all the Kong stuff, and I thought the human elements with Kong in this movie were great. They didn't have Brie Larson or anything like that, and apparently all the natives on the island are pretty much gone, except for this girl who's this little girl who's deaf is the last remaining of the island people or whatever. So Kong has a little bit of a relationship with this girl and can kind of talk through like some sign language, which they show a little bit later into the movie. Now, what I will say is that with this movie, since they have Godzilla and Kong, they felt like they also needed to have Godzilla's human characters in this movie. So not only do you have Kong with his, little deaf girl and the other human elements that are around her, you have Godzilla and Millie Bobby Brown and they have Godzilla's human elements. Millie Bobby Brown, her father from the second movie, shows up in a few scenes. They also have Godzilla's human characters in this movie, and they are completely fucking pointless in this movie. The only way Godzilla's human characters are justified in this movie is there is a scene, without giving too many spoilers, there is a scene at the end of the movie where they do something that enables basically Godzilla and Kong to win against Mechagodzilla. I don't think that's a spoiler at this point. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that fucking Mechagodzilla is in this movie, and this movie is coming out on Blu-ray soon. I believe it's like next month at the time of me recording this. So the only reason those characters are needed is because at a scene in the last act of the movie, they do something that enables Godzilla and Kong to win against Mechagodzilla. That is the only reason they're there. But they needed to give the Godzilla's human characters a reason to be there at the end of the movie, so they shoehorn scenes with Millie Bobby Brown and these other two characters throughout the whole movie. And literally you could tell they are scenes that are just shoved into this movie because literally these characters accomplish nothing. All the earlier scenes in the first two acts of the movie are just them. Those scenes are just there so these characters have an excuse to be at the end of the movie. That is it. Those characters are not needed, but I think a lot of it could be that Millie Bobby Brown is kind of big right now. I think they wanted to keep her in this movie, so they wanted to kind of shoehorn her character in here but not really do some real good writing to justify it, That kind of really bugged me. I hated that. Kong's human element in this movie is fine, perfectly fine, justifiable. I like it. It works. Godzilla's human elements or human characters in this movie are completely unnecessary and not needed. I did not like it. Terrible. Just annoying. And I'm gonna kind of, a lot of the things I love about this movie are just that this movie is really freaking good. I love the story. I like how it plays out. I like all the fighting and stuff like that. So I'm gonna mainly talk about my complaints because otherwise, I really, really enjoy this movie. It is so much fucking fun. It's just the complaints that I do have are pretty specific. So I do kind of want to talk about those, get those out of the way. Another thing that really bothered me, that I thought was just weird. It didn't really bother me, I guess, but it felt like there needed to be another Kong movie. It should have been Godzilla, Kong, Godzilla versus Kong. And then they probably would have had to have rewritten this movie and make it a more even split between Godzilla and Kong, instead of Godzilla and Kong basically being a Kong movie. But it felt like there needed to be another Kong movie here, because the beginning of Godzilla versus Kong starts out with basically, and if I say Godzilla instead of Kong, I apologize. Going back and forth between these names is ridiculous, and I get the names mixed up all the time. But basically, the beginning of Godzilla versus Kong starts out with Kong taking a tree, shaves off all the branches and everything like that. I think he does some interacting with this little deaf girl or whatever. But then he throws the tree in the air, and then you see that the tree basically hits the top of this dome, and the dome is basically a big giant panel that's supposed to look like the sky. So you can see that they've basically entrapped Kong in this big dome on Skull Island. Now, Jesus, here's the thing. They kind of explain that Kong is really only in this dome and staying in it and behaving basically because of this little girl. And it seems like he kind of threw the tree at the top of the dome and broke part of the top of the dome, to basically remind the humans that he can get out basically at any time that he wants. He's, you know, but my thing is, like, I understand that Kong Skull Island was in like the 70s or whatever. But they had a really hard time getting through the storm clouds to get to the island in that movie. Like, they had a little bit of a hard time. So it was a little hard enough for them to get helicopters through, you know? So you're telling me that, and I know this movie takes place in presumably, I'm guessing 2020 or 2021 or whatever. In fact, I think they say in the movie, or there's some stuff that actually says, like, I think it takes place in 2020 or something like that. But, like, I understand that technology has advanced, but has it really advanced so much to the point where not only is it easier for them to get to the island, which I would understand, but they're able to get all these, like, people and supplies and, like, construction equipment and everything to build domes and shit on this island? I don't quite understand that, and it seems like a bit of a stretch for me that not only... I can understand if it's easier for them to just get on the island. Like, I get it. Like, we have, you know, better made planes, ships, stuff like that. Like, I get it. That's fine. But to be able to get all the equipment, like materials and equipment and everything onto the island and build a big dome on the island to keep Kong in seems a little bit of a stretch for me. And it seems like this scene in the movie is kind of like you just kind of have to accept it. You kind of have to take a leap of faith and just kind of accept that this is what's going on. Like I said, they needed another Kong movie, I think, in here to kind of show Kong in a more modern aspect and kind of show that, you know, humans going to the island again and, you know, showing how they're doing it in order to be able to even not just get on the island in the first place and have it be easier, but get all this equipment and shit onto the island and just show, you know, like, more of, like, what they're trying to do with Kong. And they could have shown some really cool scenes of, you know, just how the island people are kind of diminishing and whatever, and, you know, all that's basically left is this a little girl. But I guess I understand why they wouldn't want to make another Kong movie, because they would have to make it on Skull Island, basically. And basically the reasoning for Godzilla vs. Kong is to not only have them fight, but to get Kong off the island and get him into the Hollow Earth shit, which shouldn't be any surprise either, because they talk about that in the Godzilla movie. But let's see. In terms of, I would say another thing that, the last thing that kind of bothers me about the movie is the Godzilla, and this is kind of talking about the Godzilla human elements again. Like I said, the human characters for Godzilla are only there basically for a part in the last act of the movie. And basically, I don't even really know how I should say this. This is going to be a little bit of a spoiler. I don't think I can dance around this without spoiling too much, but the movie's almost out on Blu-ray. It's like less than a month until it comes out, I think, or around a month until it comes out on Blu-ray. And then you could watch it, you were able to watch it on HBO Max, for Christ's sake, at your home, so I don't really care too much about spoilers, but basically, you have Godzilla and Kong fight in this movie, and there's basically only one of them left. Like, after Godzilla and Kong fight for, like, the, you know, final time in the movie, only one of them is left standing to basically fight Mechagodzilla, who shows up after their fight. And then, of course, they, you know, something happens, they end up both working together to fight Mechagodzilla, which is what I predicted well before the movie came out. I pretty much knew that was going to happen. And basically, like, and I shit you not, basically what allows Godzilla, like, Mechagodzilla is super fucking powerful, and of course, you know, basically I'll say this, Godzilla fucking wins against Kong, and I'll talk about that a little bit after this, but Godzilla wins, but of course, you know, it was a pretty fucking awesome battle, I'm not gonna lie, it was an awesome battle, but of course, you know, Godzilla, a little bit weakened, a little bit tired, he went through some shit, Kong put up a really good fucking fight in that last fight, and like, Godzilla's fucking weak. So, of course, when Mechagodzilla shows up out of fucking well, not nowhere, but when fucking Mechagodzilla shows up, of course, like, Godzilla's gonna be struggling. I mean, you could say that Mechagodzilla's stronger than Godzilla anyway. If you want to make that argument, that's fine. But, like, the battle is even gonna be worse because Godzilla's still, you know, weak. He just fought Kong. So, if Mechagodzilla is stronger than Godzilla anyway, just imagine how much more stronger, I guess, to do bad English, but just imagine how much more powerful Mechagodzilla is going to be against a weakened, you know, Godzilla. So basically they're having a hard time. So basically you have a weakened Godzilla and a weakened Kong fighting a fully powerful Mechagodzilla. And the thing is like, Godzilla's human characters do something, and I don't want to spoil this because it's pretty stupid, but they do something that basically weakens Mechagodzilla's connection to a satellite. And when that connection is basically weakened or severed, that is when Godzilla and Kong basically tear apart Mechagodzilla. And I found it a little bit strange that the only thing that was making Mechagodzilla even remotely powerful was a connection to a satellite. That is a weird story choice. I don't think it's very good writing. I think it's pretty lazy. And basically what leads up to that connection getting severed was it was kind of so stupid. It was hilarious. I don't know how else to put it. It was just kind of dumb. God, it was kind of stupid. And I just really don't like the fact that the only thing that made Mechagodzilla a threat was his connection to a fucking satellite up in space. Like, are you fucking kidding me? That was it? Like, they're jacking into, like, in the movie you see scenes with Ghidorah's skull, and they're jacking into it and taking power from the skull. But really, it's just a fucking connection to a satellite that ruins the whole damn thing. Like, and it almost makes it completely pointless that they end up having to get this, you know, material from the Hollow Earth or whatever to power Mechagodzilla. And it's like, okay, that's powering Mechagodzilla, but basically it becomes pointless if that power doesn't do anything when a satellite connection is cut off. I don't get it. It was kind of dumb. I don't like the way they did that. The Mechagodzilla stuff could have been better in this movie. However, the Godzilla versus Kong stuff, the namesake of this movie, is absolutely fantastic. And I do actually have one more problem with this movie. This podcast is going on a little bit longer than I thought it would, so I probably will just keep this podcast as Godzilla vs. Kong. I probably won't combine it with anything else. But, the Godzilla vs. Kong stuff is great. The fights are fantastic. It is directed very well. Everything is in camera. You can see it fantastically. You really get... it is surprising to me how much personality you get out of Godzilla and Kong in these movies. Like, you kind of see this scene in the trailer where Godzilla makes like a mean face and the camera zooms in at the same time. I really loved that part of the trailer. But there's just before that, what the trailer didn't show is this is when Kong basically gets up after losing to Godzilla, basically gets up to help Godzilla fight Mechagodzilla. Kong's shoulder is kind of fucked up. It's dislocated. So what he does is he has to put it back in place, and he bashes his shoulder into like a skyscraper. And this scene takes place in Hong Kong. He bashes his shoulder into a building to pop it back in place, and then he makes that face, and then the camera zooms in. That, like, I thought that was just badass. And then there's a scene where Godzilla makes a face, and the camera like just is like pans perfectly to it, or like zooms perfectly to it. Just so many badass fucking scenes, and it gives Godzilla and Kong just so much fucking like character and personality in this movie. I fucking loved it. And I really loved the there's two Godzilla and Kong fights, and both of them go on for, as long as they need to. A character says something that would imply that there's a round 3, but there isn't. It's fucking bullshit, and I'll get to that point in a moment. This is kind of the thing. This part is so stupid, and it's so kind of small, but it's kind of my biggest complaint with the movie. It kind of really pissed me off. But there is like 3 major fights. You have the 2 Godzilla and Kong ones, and then you have the last one that is probably might be the shortest, with Godzilla and Kong versus Mechagodzilla. But basically there's 2 fights between Godzilla versus Kong. One in the ocean, and then one in Hong Kong. The one in the ocean is really fucking good, and it's a really good fight that really shows kind of just Godzilla having the upper hand because it's in the ocean. That motherfucker can swim. That's kind of his environment. And it's a really good fight. And I'm getting to the point that I want to argue is I've actually seen some people argue that Kong won in this movie. And that's not what this movie is about. I know its namesake is Godzilla versus Kong, but if you want to talk about like who actually won in this movie, Godzilla or Kong, I've actually seen people argue that it was Kong that won. And that is fucking bullshit. And not like me personally saying that because I'm more of a Godzilla fan. I know that, I admit that freely, but it is utter fucking bullshit. Like, objectively, factually, Godzilla fucking wins in this movie. Like, the only reason that Kong is still alive after the ocean fight in that movie is because the humans intervened and put like a whole bunch of like missiles in the ocean. They were basically like, I think they were almost like flashbang missiles or whatever, that basically blinded Godzilla for a split second and let go of Kong. And then Kong got back on a boat, and then all of the ships turned off their power and everything, and Godzilla thought they were all dead, basically. So Kong only survived that fight because the humans intervened. And then you get into Hong Kong, which is their second fight, and this is a great fucking fight. And it's pretty fucking long, too. It's a great fight. But the fight ends with, to give a spoiler of just how the fight ends, the fight ends with Kong on the fucking ground. Godzilla is standing above Kong with his foot on Kong's chest and basically roars in his fucking face telling him to stand the fuck down. And guess what? Kong fucking does it. Godzilla wins that fight objectively, factually. I said that weird. Factually, Godzilla fucking wins. He beats the shit out of Kong. It's a great fucking fight. Kong put up a great fucking fight. But, like, Godzilla fucking won. You can't be more the only way it could have been more definitive is if Godzilla killed Kong. And he almost kind of does. Because here's the thing. Like, Kong, in order for Kong to get back up and help Godzilla fight Mechagodzilla, Kong's heart had to be, like, restarted. And restarted isn't quite the right word because it never fully stopped, I don't think. But they do have to give him an electric shock. from the core of one of those the flying ships that the humans are flying, that the Kong's human characters are kind of flying in throughout a portion of the movie. They have to use the core of that ship to basically shock Kong back to life, basically. Like, so basically Godzilla kind of kills Kong without directly doing it. He just leaves Kong on the ground and just waits for him to die or whatever. So like Godzilla wins, and there's only two fights, the Sea one and the Hong Kong one, at least between Godzilla versus Kong. Those are the only two fights. And here's the thing. There's one of the human characters, there's this guy character who kind of is kind of the character that convinces this lady character who is kind of mothering this deaf girl, kind of convinces them that Kong, they need to move Kong and get him to Hollow Earth where there may be more Kongs, but really his objective is to get this material to power Mechagodzilla. But like they're flying around in a ship, like in the air in Hong Kong while Godzilla and Kong are fighting. And then there's a point where I can't remember the scenario exactly, but basically Kong and Godzilla, and it might have been when Kong jumps in the air with the axe and Godzilla is shooting his beam at the axe, and then you see it in the trailer, Kong smashes down on Godzilla. I think it might be that scene, but then there's like a huge kind of like explosion, and they both, Kong and Godzilla, both get blasted like apart and fly backwards. And Kong gets flown one way, Godzilla gets flown the other way, but Godzilla hits a building, and the building topples on top of Godzilla. And then it flashes to these human characters in this fucking flying ship, and this guy says, I guess round 2 goes to Kong. And I have a really big problem with this fucking scene, because that basically indicates that there's 3 fights in this movie. A fight scene, this scene in Hong Kong where they get blasted apart, but then they're still fighting. Like, when they get blasted apart, Godzilla hits the building, and the building topples on top of Godzilla. The fight continues. Like, Godzilla and Kong start fighting again less than a minute later. So this isn't this isn't a separate fight. It's still the same fight. It's less than a minute later. It's still in Hong Kong. This is still the same fucking fight. There is no round 3. It's still the same fucking fight. Godzilla comes out of the rubble that buried him from the building, and then they start fighting again. Like, there's no round 3. There's only the 2 fucking rounds. Like, if you wanted to say that there was if there was like a 15-minute, 30-minute, whatever time span between when Godzilla got buried by the building and then they start fighting again, you can argue that there's a round 3, but there is no round 3. They start fighting again less than a minute later. And it's less than a minute later, the only thing that would have kept Godzilla from coming out of the rubble immediately was because they had to show a couple scenes of the human characters. So really, the fighting, there is no break in the fight. The fight commences, like, right away. So there is no round 3. They're trying to do this thing where, okay, Godzilla won round 1, Kong won round 2, and then Godzilla wins round 3. But that's not how that works. There is no round 3. If you wanted a round 3, you either had to put a span of time in between, when Godzilla got buried and when they start fighting again, or have them fight in a separate location, because then that would more clearly signify another round. But this movie doesn't do that. They immediately start fighting again. So that guy's dialogue makes no sense. That was just the movie's way of trying to give Kong a point, like a win. But the writing wasn't there. The writing wasn't good enough to actually give Kong a win. It's like they wrote the movie and then at the end they were like, oh fuck, we didn't allow Kong to win a round. So they kind of just had to shoehorn a stupid line in there said by one of the human characters to kind of not morally, but just verbally give Kong a win, even though Kong gets his ass kicked in this movie. And like I said, he puts up a great fucking fight. He's great in this movie. I love all his scenes, especially when he goes to the Hollow Earth. Awesome point of the movie. Kong is really good in this movie, but I'm sorry, he fucking loses, and it's pretty fucking like set in stone, pretty fucking said, you know, Godzilla wins. But when they do work together to fight Mechagodzilla at the end, like, super fucking, like, super cool fight. They work together really well. They kind of, they did that dynamic of, you know, Godzilla and Kong helping each other out by what they learned in their own fights to beat Mechagodzilla. Like, I thought that kind of was really interesting. And a lot of people will kind of give credit to Kong, like, oh, well, he beat Mechagodzilla, so technically he's stronger or whatever. But, like I said, when basically at the end of the movie, Kong tears apart Mechagodzilla, like chops off his arm, tears him into a few parts or whatever, or into a few pieces. But here's the thing, like, Mechagodzilla, when that happened, Mechagodzilla was basically already turned off because he had his link severed from the satellite. So basically, Kong tore apart a corpse, you know, so it doesn't really do anything. And the only reason Godzilla was even able to do that anyway, besides from the satellite link getting cut off, was because Godzilla shot like his beam at Kong's axe. And because it shows in a fight scene that whatever Kong's axe is made out of, it's able to absorb the radiation that Godzilla can shoot. So, like, Godzilla shoots Kong's axe and absorbs that radiation, and then Kong uses it to chop off, I believe, Mechagodzilla's arm, or his tail, or something like that. But, like, the only reason Kong was able to do that was because of Godzilla. So, either way, it's like Kong is really good in this movie, and he's badass, but in terms of giving him any points in this movie, it's kind of hard to do that because, I mean, he got his ass kicked by Godzilla, and he, you know, Godzilla and Kong both get their asses kicked by Mechagodzilla until the satellite link gets cut off, but even still, Kong was only able to really chop apart Mechagodzilla because it was basically already a corpse, and because Godzilla shot his axe with his beam to power up his axe. So, you know, again, these aren't my problems with the movie, it's just my problem with people saying that Kong won, even though that's like, I mean, if you watch the fucking movie, and you pay even a little bit of attention, you can kind of see that that's not the fucking case. Like, objectively, like, this isn't an ambiguous fucking movie. Like, Godzilla fucking wins, so I don't know why fucking people were losing their minds over this and just kind of being stupid. But I really love this movie. Like I said, I had a lot of stuff to complain about just because I had some specific complaints about this movie, but really, like, the story I think is really good. I think the reason for Godzilla losing his shit and attacking all these places, basically in search of Mechagodzilla, and it's driving him crazy, kind of. Like, I really like that aspect. I like the aspect of Kong going into the Hollow Earth. I really like how they really show it. I really kind of like how they hint at the kind of the lineage and the history of, you know, Kongs in general. Just super fun fucking movie. The fights are fantastic. The movie looks great. There was no point during this movie where I thought the effects or the CG or anything looked really weird. And especially since, like, the first fight between Godzilla and Kong in the water is, like, it's during the day. It's kind of like during sunset-ish, but it's still plenty bright. There's when Godzilla, the Hong Kong fight is mostly at night. But by the time Godzilla and Kong are done fighting and they fight Mechagodzilla, that is, like, in the morning. So that is also, you know, pretty bright. So people have any complaints with that, you know, you got that. Like, the movie looks fantastic. It's super fun, and it flows very well. I believe it's like a 2-hour movie, and it's fucking great. I loved this movie, and I was really surprised that this movie wasn't like 2.5 hours long or something like that. It's 2 hours, and they were actually surprisingly able to make a very fluid, very well paced movie in 2 hours, especially with, you know, the stuff they had in this movie. You know, fucking, you know, not just 2 monsters, but 3 if you include Mechagodzilla and stuff. Like, they accomplish a lot in this 2-hour movie, but still it manages to feel very fluid, Very fun. Doesn't feel too long, doesn't feel too short. It's just a really good fucking movie. I enjoyed this movie so much, and I talked about it like longer than I thought I would. I figured this would be like a 20 to 30 minute podcast. We're approaching 50 minutes. So I'm going to go and end this podcast here. I really enjoyed this movie. I think if you watch it, I got the hiccups, Jesus Christ. I think if you watch this movie, you will really enjoy it. It is really good. Super fun movie. I enjoyed it so much. I had a blast seeing it in theaters with some friends of mine. It was just so much fucking fun because it had been a couple months since we had seen a movie together. We did see like one of my buddies and I saw Tenet together, and we fucking loved that movie. Like I said, I mentioned this on my movie channel, but Tenet was just a movie that really clicked with me. I know it didn't click with a lot of people, but that movie really fucking clicked with me, and it clicked with my buddy too. We fucking loved that movie, and then all of my friends and I saw the New Mutants, which is pretty awesome. But then we had like several months of nothing until Godzilla vs. Kong came out, so it was kind of nice to be in the theaters again and just kind of, seeing it. It's like seeing movies again. It was just super fucking fun, and this was the best. As far as I can imagine, this was the best kind of like return to movie theaters experience that I could have had. Like just months and months, almost a year of just not being able to go see movies, and then we're able to go to the movies again and see fucking Godzilla vs. Kong. God, it was awesome. And the theater was pretty fucking packed too. Like, I have to admit, like, Warner Brothers, I guess to an extent, kind of failed with Tenet. Tenet happened a little bit too soon and couldn't quite convince people to go to the movies. But if there's anything that could fucking convince people to go to the movies again, that would be Godzilla vs. Kong. It was a really good movie. I enjoyed it so freaking much. But I'm going to go and end this podcast here. I've talked on long enough. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to let me know what you think of the movie. The best way to probably do that is to go to the podcast channel, Fanatical Viewing Podcast. Leave a comment on the video, or you can hit me up on Twitter at Fanatical View. And man, I really enjoyed this movie. Next time on the podcast, we're probably going to go ahead and talk about Mortal Kombat, the new Mortal Kombat movie. That'll probably be a short podcast. I don't have too much to say about that movie. Again, it's another movie where it's like I have some specific problems with that movie, so that podcast actually might go on longer than I imagine it probably will, but I'm not a huge Mortal Kombat fan in general. I've only dabbled in the series, but we'll talk about that next time. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.